It's no secret I'm a fan of Fractal Design's case releases for 2022. In fact, I don't think there's a case that they've come out with that I didn't like. So when I was scrolling through Twitter a few weeks ago and Fractal had posted they had a brand new small form factor case just released, I had to jump on it. Let's see if it's worth my excitement. Hey YouTube, I'm Danny. Welcome to Danny's Tech Channel. Allow me to introduce you to the new Fractal Design Ridge. This was developed in collaboration with gaming and entertainment enthusiasts to enhance the small form factor PC experience. So basically what they're saying is they asked small form factor PC builders what they wanted in a case, and then Fractal made it happen. A few highlights that this case has is you can set it up in a horizontal or vertical orientation. It has a very small footprint of only 12.6 liters. There is a PCI 4.0 riser cable included. It supports GPUs of up to 335 millimeters in length, and it also comes with two 140 millimeter Aspect 14 fans pre-installed. Now, this is usually where I would do my walk around of the case, and it's a little tough with this design to do my usual walk around, but I'll try my best. The dimensions of the Fractal Ridge are 374 by 110 by 395 millimeters when it's in its vertical orientation, or 360 by 375 by 155 millimeters in its horizontal orientation. Like I said, it's a very unique case, and there's a few things you'll have to do before you attempt your build. First thing you'll need to do is remove all the panels. This involves loosening the two captive thumb screws on the rear, then pulling outward on the panel to release the pop locks. You'll have to do this for both panels. They will then slide back and out. You'll also want to remove the front panel, which is magnetically attached to the case. As you can see on here, it's got two top magnets and two bottom magnets. This is just a front mesh filter. Next, you'll have to remove the top and bottom panels, which happen to be held on by 4 screws each. There's 2 on each side. After that, pull up on the panel to release the pop locks, just like on the side panels. Now you can see the entire frame of the case, but you're still not ready to build in this thing. There's a center support bar that the included riser cable is mounted on. To remove this, you'll need to undo 3 screws first. It just lifts up after that. If you look at the top of the case, you'll see mounting locations for 3 80mm fans. This top bracket should be removed to allow installation of the GPU. It's 8 screws, 4 silver ones and 4 black ones. At least that's what my case has. Also, there are 4 screws that go through this bracket into the included 140mm fans that'll need to come out as well. If you have a small enough GPU, you might not need to do this, but it does make it easier. Now that it's completely apart, let me explain what I can in sections. I'll start with the motherboard tray first. For the motherboard, the case will only support mini ITX boards. You have a max CPU cooler height of 70 millimeters. There's no ifs, ands, or buts on that. 70 is your top. Moving over to the left side here, you have your power supply mount. The case will accommodate SFX or SFXL power supplies. You'll need to remove the power supply mount bracket for the build. It's held in by 4 screws, 2 on each side of the case. So you'll have to flip it over to access the back screws to remove the bracket. Then you'll install the power supply into the bracket and reinstall the bracket into the case. Don't forget to plug it in. The power supply extension cable is pre-installed and comes out the back of the case at the bottom, right near the motherboard. You might want to flip the power switch on too. I'll explain why later. On the back side of the power supply is 2 mounting locations for 2.5-inch drives. You also have 2 mounting locations right at the front behind the mesh panel as well. So you have a total of 4 mounting locations for 2.5-inch SSDs or hard disk drives. Quite a lot of storage for such a small case. Now on to the top section, which is the most important part of this case actually. The entire top section of the case here is fully modular. You can decide if you want to put a graphics card here, a liquid cooler, a graphics card and a liquid cooler. It's got really a plethora of options for you when it comes to building in this. For GPU mounting, the max length of GPU is 335 millimeters. Now, if you have an SSD installed in the front, it drops down to 325 millimeters. The max height of the GPU is 125 millimeters if you decide to use the 3 top fan mounting locations. This section can fit 80 millimeter fans, by the way, if you're curious. If you don't install fans, you can fit a 137 millimeter max height GPU. The max thickness is 57 millimeters with the two 140 millimeter fans installed, or 82 millimeters without the side fans installed. After I was done building in this, I wanted to see what kind of graphics cards could fit in here because I already picked a pretty big size card to begin with, and I was very impressed to see that the Asus ROG Strix card can fit with the 140 millimeter fans installed, and I also managed to wedge in my RTX 3090 Founders Edition as well. So both of those cards do fit. I tested them myself. The Strix card had to have a little bit of modification if you're wondering. For liquid cooling, you can fit a 120 millimeter radiator with up to a 175 millimeter long GPU, or you can fit a 280 or 240 millimeter radiator without a GPU or the 140 millimeter fans installed. You've got plenty of options, like I said. The last big thing of note is the two Aspect 14 PWM controlled fans that they have here in the case. These are included pre-installed. They're 140 millimeter fans. They are PWM, so they've got the 4 pins, not the 3 pins. They're daisy chainable to each other, so you can plug them both in and plug them into your motherboard. Most ITX motherboards only have 1, maybe 2 headers for fans. Being able to daisy chain them makes it a lot easier. I suggest that you use these fans because you're paying for them already in the cost of the case, and they're quiet and perform really well. Last thing we'll talk about is the I/O. It's at the bottom of the front filter. What we have is one USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C connector, 2 USB 3.0 connectors, a power button, and your combo microphone and headphone jack. There's also a white LED power light bar behind the mesh front panel that will illuminate once you turn the computer on. Have you gotten value from this so far? If so, give me a like down below to let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. It doesn't cost you anything, so why wouldn't you do it? Anyways, onto my build notes, and there is a few. First, I want to talk about temperatures of the case, because when you're talking about a small form factor build, temperatures are pretty important, and usually they're not good. I did 2 different tests for these. I did a Cinebench R23 test, which stresses the CPU directly, and then I did Unigine Heaven. I ran like a 10-minute stress test on that. That tests the GPU. I guess I should start by telling you some of the components that I put into here. For the CPU, I use the Ryzen 5 5600X, and I use the Wraith Stealth cooler that comes in the box with it. For the GPU, I use the Asus Tough Gaming RTX 3060. So the temperatures are kind of important here because when I ran the Cinebench R23 benchmark, which stresses your CPU, using the Wraith Stealth cooler, the shorter one from AMD, the temperatures were not good. My CPU maxed out at 84 degrees Celsius. I was not happy with that, and I knew that it was the CPU cooler, not the actual case itself. So what I did is I took the Wraith Spire cooler, which came with some of the older AMD processors. I bought this cooler a while ago and I decided to throw it on here. The Wraith Spire only reached 72 degrees Celsius under the same Cinebench benchmark. Second test I ran is Unigine Heaven, that's your GPU benchmark. Running the benchmark for about 10 minutes, I got 58 degrees Celsius on the GPU and 66 degrees Celsius on the CPU. That was using the Wraith Stealth. And then with the Wraith Spire, I got even better. I got 58 degrees on the GPU once again, and 59 degrees on the CPU. So if I was gonna be building in this, I would definitely use the Wraith Spire cooler, not the Wraith Stealth. I think that thing is crap to begin with. Okay, with the temperature testing out of the way, let's talk about my likes and dislikes with the Fractal Ridge. Very first thing, the user manual is excellent with this case. Fractal's user manuals are awesome. They are very informative, easy to understand with well-drawn pictures. They have blue highlights of the components and all steps are outlined. The Fractal Ridge Guide in particular has multiple stand mounting positions identified, which you can do vertical or horizontal, and there's actually 2 horizontal layouts. And then it also shows you 3 configurations of air cooling, home theater, and AIO water cooling. The Builder's Guide section walks you through the entire build process and even has a cable management tips section. So Fractal, if you're watching this, which I don't know why you would be, but you never know, that user guide is awesome. Please continue to do that, and I think that should be a selling point on the case itself. Like, advertise your awesome user guide over everybody else because it's great. Last thing I really liked about the case is the fantastic airflow. I expected it to not be really good because most small form factor cases are not good airflow. This has holes on every single panel of the case. What does that give you? Really good airflow. And these 2 140 millimeter fans definitely help that out. Now, of course, not everything's perfect. There is a few things that I disliked about the case. As I said, the CPU temperatures were going to be a negative, but that really changed for me once I swapped that CPU cooler out, and now I'd say it's a positive, so scratch that one off my list. So first real dislike of the case is I had to completely disassemble the case to be able to build in it. In fact, you're actually building the case around the PC. You're not really building in a case. It is a frame that you're assembling over top of a computer. Now, I guess that could be a positive or a negative because, I mean, it took me quite a bit of time to disassemble the entire case, and I myself had to read the directions to be able to figure out what popped off and what had to be unscrewed first. But once you do it a couple times, it's pretty simple. And by taking all the panels off, you give yourself full access to the entire case when building. So that does make the build process easier. So I guess that would be a positive and a negative. Another negative with the case is the power supply is at the bottom of the case when it's oriented vertically like this. The problem with that is, in order to turn your power supply on or off, the actual switch on the power supply, you have to remove this bottom panel. It is held on by 4 screws, and that's where your stand is. When I built the computer, I didn't flip the switch, and I assembled everything. I put the stand on to make it stand upright and all that, and then the computer wouldn't power on when I pushed the power button. Don't make the same mistake I did. Now let's talk about cable management. That didn't happen. I didn't even want to try to be able to fit my hands in here to use the cable tie locations that they outlined. Their user guide has all the cable tie spots on it as far as where they recommend and stuff. And like I said, it shows you their recommended path for cable management. Fractal knows it's a pain to cable manage in a small form factor case. My final problem with the case, and I don't know if this is the case in general or the motherboard that I picked, it was just a weird quirk thing that I've never encountered because I don't build with a lot of riser cables. Fractal claims that it's a PCI 4.0 riser cable. However, when I went to boot the computer up, my computer wouldn't go into Windows. It kept freezing right before Windows, and I removed all the components out of the case, set them up on the cardboard box in a test bed type of thing, and it booted just fine. So I knew it had to be something with the case. It's something to do with the riser cable. As soon as you plug that riser cable in, I had to set, in my BIOS, I had to set it to PCI 3.0 instead of 4.0. Otherwise, the computer will not boot. And I have no idea what it is. It's beyond me. If you know, let me know in the comments. Why will it not boot with that riser cable with that setting? I don't know. Okay, final thoughts on the Fractal Design Ridge. I didn't screw this top panel down. What are my thoughts on the Fractal Design Ridge? I'll put it simple for you. I love this case. It has fantastic airflow. You can set it up in so many different configurations, whether it be horizontal or vertical. It's a really small footprint. They include a PCI 4.0 riser cable, and it can even fit behemoth-sized GPUs. I think this is a great new addition to the small form factor market. Now, its look might be subjective to everybody, it really is. I think it looks cool, but some people said that it looks old and outdated. There's a few little projects that I want to try out with this case, and I actually had a lot of fun building in it despite the fact that it was kind of challenging. There's so much that you can do with it. If you enjoyed my review of the Fractal Design Ridge, don't forget to subscribe down below and come back for more PC-related content. And as I always say, I'm Danny with Danny's Tech Channel, and I'll see you in the next video.